Jai Hind all of you. My name is Mahima Saxena, Assistant Professor at AKGEC in CSE Department. Today my topic is Introduction to DBMS. Now what is data? First of all, in DBMS, the full form of DBMS is Database Management System. Basically, in this subject, we will try to understand how we can manage our data in different forms. First, we need to understand what is data. So basically, data is a collection of distinct small unit of information. It can be used in a variety of forms like text, number, media, bytes, etc. It can be stored in a piece of paper, electronic memory, etc. The word data is basically originated from the word datum. That means single piece of information. It is the plural of the word datum. In computing, data is information that can be translated into a form for efficient movement and processing. Data is interchangeable. Basically, we have lots of data. Data is in any form, raw form, unraw form, structured, unstructured format. From that data, we need to capture or we need required information, and that we will use in our further processes. Now, what is database? A database is an organized collection of data so that it can be easily accessed and managed. You can organize data into table, rows, columns, and indexes to make it easier to find relevant information. Basically, suppose we have data, lots of data in unstructured format. Then we need to convert that data into a proper format. Because of that, it's easy to us to collect information from that data that will be useful for us. The whole data is not useful for us. The information we required for ourselves, we will extract from that. Database handlers create a database in such a way that only one set of software program provides access of data to all the users. The main purpose of our database is to operate on large amount of information by storing, retrieving, and managing data. There are many dynamic websites on the World Wide Web nowadays, which can handle through databases. For example, a model that check the availability of rooms in a hotel. It is an example of dynamic website that uses a database. There are many available databases like MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, SQL Server, etc. Modern databases are managed by the database management system. We have a lots of centralized database, distributed database, relational database, NoSQL database, cloud database, object-oriented database, hierarchical database, network database, personal database. Now first, what is centralized database? Centralized database is basically a database that stores a centralized data system. It comforts the user to access the stored data from different locations through several applications. It is the type of database that stores data at a centralized database system. It comforts the user to access the data from different locations through several applications. These applications contains the authentications process to let user access data securely. An example of a centralized database system can be a central library that carries a central database of each library in a college or system. That database is an example of centralized database. Advantages of centralized database: it has decreased the risk of data management, that is, manipulation of data will not affect the core data. If we will change, for example, we have a database of central library in a college. If we change some data in our format, the centralized database will not affected by that change. This is the advantage of centralized database. Data consistency is maintained as it manages data in a central repository. It provides better data quality, which enables organization to establish data standards. It is less costly because fewer vendors are required to handle the data sets. Now, what is the disadvantage of centralized database system? Just the size of the centralized database system is very, very large, which increases the response time or fetching the data. Suppose I need to check, we have a centralized database system, we have a database of library. If I need to check for some student that he or she takes some books and didn't pay it back, then when I enter the roll number or I enter the ID, it will take more time to give the data, because we have large amount of data. Because of that, the response time or fetching the data is increases. It is not easy to update such a extensive database system. If any failure occurs, entire database is lost, which could be a huge loss. This is the worst advantage, this is the worst case for centralized database system. If any failure occurs, then all the data will be lost, which could be a huge loss for any university or college. The next one is distributed database system. Unlike centralized database system, in distributed database system, data is distributed among different database systems of an organization. These database systems are connected via communication links. Such links help the end user to access the data easily. We can further divide a distributed database system into two parts: homogeneous database system and heterogeneous database system. Now, what is homogeneous and heterogeneous? Those database systems which execute on the same operating system and use the same applications, process, and carry the same hardware devices are called homogeneous distributed databases. Now, what is heterogeneous? Those database systems which execute on different operating systems. Those database systems which executed on different operating system under different application procedure and carries different hardware devices is called heterogeneous distributed database system. This is the basic advantage between these two database systems, distributed database system. Now, what is the advantage of distributed data system? Modular development is possible in a distributed database. That is, the system can be expanded by including new components and connecting them to the distributed database system. If our server failure will not affect the entire data set. If basically we have in distributed data system, our data is distributed on different databases. If some failure occurs and one database is failed, then the failure of that, because of that failure, other databases will not affected. This is the most important advantage of distributed data system. Now, next is relational database. Now, what is relational database? Our data is stored in the form of table, rows and columns. This is called a relational database system. The database is based on the relational data model, which stores data in the form of rows, which is called tuples, and columns, which is called attributes, and together form a table called relational database. That's why it is called relational database. A relational database uses SQL, structured query language, for storing, manipulating, as well as maintaining the data. Each table in the database carries a key that makes the database unique from others. Examples of relational database are MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, etc. In relational database, we have different types of key like candidate key, primary key, foreign key, super key. These are the different keys that we used in relational database and which will help us for fetching the data. Next is NoSQL database. NoSQL, or not only SQL, is a type of database that is used for storing a wide range of dataset. It is not a relational database as it stores data not only in tabular form but in several different ways. It came into existence when the demand for building modern applications increased. Thus, NoSQL presents a variety of database technologies in response to the demand. We can further divide a NoSQL database into the following 4 parts: key value storage, document oriented database, graph database, wide column stores. Now the first is key value storage. It is the simplest type of database storage when it stores every single item as a key or attribute name holding its value together. This is called key value storage. Second one is document oriented database. A type of database used to store data as JSON like document. It helps developers in storing data by using the same document model format as used in the application code. Third one is graph based. It is used for storing vast amount of data in a graph like structure. Most commonly, like social networking websites use the graph database. Fourth one is wide range stores. It is similar to the data represented in relational database. Here, data is stored in large columns together instead storing in rows. Advantages of NoSQL database. It enables good productivity in the application development as it is not required to store data in a structured format. It is a better option for managing and handling large data sets. It provides high scalability. Users can quickly access data from the database through key values. The next one is cloud database, a type of database where data is stored in a virtual environment and execute over the cloud computing platform. It provides user with various cloud computing services like SAS, SaaS, SAS, PaaS, and IaaS, etc. For accessing the databases, there are numerous cloud platforms, but the best options are Amazon Web Services, which is also famously called as AWS, Microsoft Azure, Cambritaria, ScienceSoft, Google Cloud, etc. The next one is object-oriented database. The types of database that uses the object-based model approach for storing data in the database. The data is represented and stored as objects, which are similar to the objects used in the object-oriented programming language. Next one is hierarchical database. It is a type of database that's stored in the form of parent-children relationship nodes. Here, it organizes data in a tree-like structure. Data get stored in the form of records that are connected via links. Each child record in the tree will contain only one parent, and on the other hand, each parent record can have multiple child records. Next one is network database. In this database that typically follows the network data model. Here, the representation of the data is in the form of nodes connected via links between them. It's basically just similar to a network. Like one node is connected to other node and other node is connected to other node, and this process goes on. Unlike the hierarchical database, it allows each record to have multiple children and parents node to form a centralized graph structure. In previous database, the process is like the one parent and one node, but in this database, it allows each record to have multiple children and parent node to form a centralized graph structure. Next one is personal database. In personal database, collecting and storing data on the user system defines a personal database. This type of database is basically designed for a single user. Advantage of personal database is it is simple and easy to handle. It occupies less storage space and it is small in size. The disadvantage of personal database is if a person has lots of data, then it is not suitable for personal database. In personal database, the size is small. Next topic is DBMS architecture. The DBMS design depends upon its architecture. The basic client-server architecture is used to deal with a large number of PCs, web servers, databases, servers, and other components that are connected with networks. The client-server architecture consists of many PCs and workstations which are connected via network. DBMS architecture depends upon how the users are connected to the database to get their request done. In DBMS architecture, we have three types of architecture: one tier architecture, two tier architecture, and three tier architecture. In one tier architecture, any changes done here will directly be done on the database itself. It does not provide any handy tool for users. The one tier architecture is used for the development of local applications where programmers can directly communicate with the database for the quick responses. In two-tier architecture, the two-tier architecture is same as basic client-server architecture. In the two-tier architecture, applications on the client end can directly communicate with the database at the server end. For the interaction, APIs are used. The user interface and application program run on the client side. The server is responsible to provide the functionalities like query processing and transaction management. To communicate with the DBMS, client side applications establish a connection with the server side. When the connection is established, they start doing processing the request which are generated by user. Three-tier architecture. The three-tier architecture contains another layer between the client and the server. In this architecture, client can directly communicate with the server. In the previous one, in one tier architecture, the client is directly sit on the database and communicate directly. But in second tier, the user application is provided to run the client side. But in third, in this architecture, client cannot directly communicate with the server. The application on the client end interacts with an application server, which further communicates with the database management system. End user has no idea about the existence of database beyond the application server. The database has no idea about any other user beyond the application. The three-tier architecture is used in cases of like large web. This is the complete architecture of types three-tier architecture. Thank you.